Greetings. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Today we continue on with our exciting book study of The Magician, His Training and Work. So if you're ready to continue with this extremely insightful teaching, go ahead and buckle up. Get your notebooks and your pencils ready as we dive into more of the practical aspects of the ritual. All right, so we are going to continue with chapter 10. Last week we read about the audio and the visual aspect of magic, the importance of visualization, and the importance of utilizing all 5 of your senses in your magical work. Yes, yes. All right. So one more thing here. My keyboard done? Yep, I think that's the issue. Crazy. All right, so welcome. Come on in. Peace and greetings to everybody. Ashley B, peace. You know, I'm gonna ask, did you finish that painting yet? Cosmic Traveler, peace. Welcome. Al Dickey, my brother. Welcome. Hope you're having a great evening. Kevros, SS God, peace. Greetings. The Electric Rose, peace and greetings. Dub VT, peace. Welcome, my brother. Give me just a second here. It appears that something that should have been charged is not charged. Not my phone. Oh, I know what I did. Oh well, we'll fix it later. We got a book study to do. All right. Hakeem Lamidi, peace and greetings. Hazard Pie, welcome. You're ready for the hot and fresh, right out the oven. Sunshine Chick, always great to see you. Greetings and salutations. AZW, peace. AZW says, my first week of planetary mantras hit different. That's awesome to hear, bro. Keep it up. And I want you to see what kind of progress you have over time. Alchemical Talks, peace. All right, so chapter 10 is where we are. Chapter 10 is where we are. Now, right here on the opposite side of chapter 10, see that? This is about the flashing colors. This is a very important concept in the Golden Dawn teachings, because this is how you utilize the colors of the Tree of Life to enhance your astral projection. In a way, it's almost like street signs, road signs, highway signs that let you know where you are. The colors tell you what aspect of the astral plane you're dealing with. So right here on this side is a chart of these colors. Now this is not the first and only place you've seen this. I've made this chart and passed it out in the Magus Society Facebook group. This is in the back of Dion Fortune's Mystical Kabbalah. Also, if you look in the back of the Kabbalistic Tarot, I've talked about this book many times, so you should have this one. If you look in the back of the Kabbalistic Tarot, you'll see this very same chart, right? Let's see. Specifically, you'll find that chart on page 273. But basically, what this chart is, the color scales, it's going to tell you what color the different sephirah are according to the different tree that we're on. The book in the Kabbalistic Tarot, the page 273 in the Kabbalistic Tarot actually has the colors of the paths as well. So if you have this book, this blue book, this Kabbalistic Tarot, go ahead and check page 273 and then you'll see the full version of this list. All right, so chapter 10, the flashing colors. Cool. AZW says, been taking notes too. Awesome, bro. Awesome. And what you find is that the energies of the day are often clashing with people who are not in alignment. So these mantras give you a way to subconsciously align yourself with the energy of the day. The same way that these colors that we just talked about help to align you with a specific part of the astral plane. But we're going to get into that in detail right here. Chapter 10, the flashing colors. Let me know about the music. Is it too loud? Do I need to turn it down? Or is it just right? Or is it just right? Root I am, peace. 6 slap plays 9, peace. You're very welcome. Mercato, welcome, greetings. Mercato says, we love you, Travis. Aw, I love you too. Okay, let's go. So, in practical magical work, the Kabbalistically trained magician makes great use of the technical device known as the flashing colors. But the rationale of the technique has been little understood, even by those who have successfully employed it. It may be said that there are several keys to the use of the flashing colors, and only one of these is dealt with here. Alicia M., peace. Good to see you. It is, of course, not essential for the magician to understand the mental and psychic machinery he's using, but when it is possible to obtain such an understanding, it enables him to use the method to greater advantage. And that right there is coming from a Hermetic magician, right? Hermetic and Orphic. Coming from the Hermetic side, he said it's not necessary to know how this stuff works, but if you have an opportunity to figure it out, it can do nothing but help you do it even better, right? So even talking about, like, say, cyclomancy, there's a lot of different techniques and exercises that can help you harness and hone your psychic ability, and it isn't necessary to know exactly why it works, but if you do take the time to study and figure it out, the nuts and the bolts, it'll only show you how you can utilize it even more precisely. So, it is of course not essential for the magician to understand the mental and psychic machinery he is using, but when it is possible to obtain such an understanding, it enables him to use the method to greater advantage. It is for this reason that a brief consideration of the technique of the flashing colors has been included here. It will be clear to the reader that color is of primary importance in the magical work, and, in fact, is one of its chief keys. Color is one of the chief keys in magical work. Briefly, the magician employs color as a means of tuning in to the various forces with which he is dealing. Turn it down Just we have said in another part of this book that the magician is in the same position as regards his art as the violinist is in regards to his music. Both have to make their own notes, psychic or musical, and in the case of the magician, the psychic tuning in is based upon a methodical building up of symbols, colors, and sounds, all linked together by certain mental and emotional concepts. Dimensional legend piece. So yeah, in case you don't remember, the metaphor that he's talking about here is, whenever a violinist is playing the violin, you have to do what they call make your own notes. There's no frets on a violin like there are on a guitar. When you're playing guitar, if you push the string down, the fret is going to, make sure that you're playing that specific note. A violin and instruments like that, they don't have frets, so you literally have to figure out where the note is through muscle memory. The same thing with like playing a trombone. You have to know what length to pull the horn for it to play a specific note. The same thing goes for magic. You've got to learn how to get in where you fit in. These colors, these sigils and symbols, these the correspondences. This magical language is a dialogue that you have to build yourself. So it says both have to make their own notes, psychic or musical. And in the case of the magician, the psychic tuning in is based upon a methodical building up of symbols, colors, and sounds, all linked together by certain mental and emotional concepts. Each sephirah on the tree of life, and each of the 22 paths which connect the sephirah, is colored according to a traditional system. This system, which has been handed down in the esoteric schools through many generations of students, is, as we have already said, partly based on actual correspondence between the color, sound, and symbol, and the actual nature of that aspect of the universe and the soul of man which is being dealt with. Please remember, that the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, is not just, it's not a map, and it's not a map of planets, right? It's not a map of a place. It's a cipher, just like the Rosetta Stone. For most of the Western world in its existence, we didn't understand hieroglyphs. We didn't understand them. We couldn't crack the code. But then somebody found what was called the Rosetta Stone, and it had writings that were in hieroglyphs and Greek and another language. And because of that Rosetta Stone, they were able to translate the hieroglyphs, right? So likewise, this Tree of Life is something like a Rosetta Stone that can allow you to understand the inner workings of your soul and the energies of the universe, right? This whole universe is a combination of energies that are in a certain kind of balance. So understanding the Tree of Life, it's not a map, but it is a diagram of relationships. That's what it is. It's a diagram of relationships that can be applied to the universe and can be applied to your soul and can be applied to just about anything. That's what makes it so perfect. So it's not like, oh, I'm in Yesod, oh, I'm in Gibera, and it's not like, oh, Gibera is Mars, Bina is Saturn. It's simply like that Rosetta Stone. It's a symbolical map of relationships, not a map of a place. Just like your soul, right? So like you said, the actual nature of that aspect of the universe and the soul of man which is being dealt with. But there are many such attributions which are arbitrary and which do not have any factual relationship with the aspect concerned. Nevertheless, if the constant use of them over the generations has built them into the psychic structure of the magical egregore, then such a magical correspondence will have been established. This applies to the whole of the magical art. To give out the principle involved in the use of the color scales is exceedingly difficult, but perhaps the consideration of the ordinary musical scale may be helpful. If we study the action of the ordinary piano, we find a large number of wires of increasingly finer diameter. And these wires, when struck, they give out sounds varying from a very deep, resounding note on one end of the keyboard to a very high, shrill note on the other side. In between, we have several eightfold divisions. If, for the sake of argument, we have four such divisions, then we may name them A, B, C, and D. Now we may number each thus: A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6, A7, B1, B2, B3, B4, B5, B6, B7, C1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, D1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then B is the end of the series A through B. The B is the end of the series A through B, and the beginning of series B through C. And C is the end of the series B through C, and the beginning of the series C through D. Let me know if anybody missed that, because probably a diagram would be more helpful. But yeah, basically this is the color scales. You got the, all right, so here's the name of all the Sephira. And it says station on the tree. There's Kether, Hakma, Bina, Gijula, Gibura, Tifereth, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malkuth, right? Now, in Atziluth, the color of Kether is brilliance. The color of Hakma is pure soft blue, right? So in the four different worlds, the color is going to be different. What everyone is used to seeing is the color scale of these Sephira in the world of Bria. So you'll see Kether as pure white brilliance. You'll see Hakma as gray. You'll see Bina as black. You'll see Gidula as deep blue. You'll see Gibura as scarlet red. You'll see Tifereth as yellow. Netzach as emerald. Hod as orange. Yesod as violet. Malkuth as citrine, olive, russet black. That's how the Tree of Life Sephira are colored in the Bria scale. But on the other scales, the one above and the two below, the color scheme is different. Like I said, this is a map of how you know what forces you're dealing with, what level of force. So what he just described is comparing these different levels to a piano. Right? All right, so nobody said they needed clarification, so it looks like we're good. But basically what he's saying here is that, you know, if you imagine a keyboard laid out, they're all the same notes, just a different pitch. So from the first part, he's got A1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those are the same notes as B1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but on a higher pitch. So you've got a series A through B, B through C, C through D. And those series are the collection of notes, same notes, but on a different pitch. You're your truth, peace. Or to use the terms of the Kabbalah, B is the Malkuth of A through B, and the Kether of B through C. Whereas in music we have an 8-fold scale, in the Kabbalistic system we have a 10-fold scale, but the principle is the same. In musical practice, we've taken a certain section of the gamut of vibrations which lie around us, audible section, and have established a certain arbitrary musical code upon it. In magical practice, we have taken that vibrational range, all of it, and have established thereon a similar code of interpretation. The magical notation is to be found in the Tree of Life, and its associated correspondences and the relationships involved are indicated by the flashing colors. I think that's a great breakdown. That's a great way to describe it. So, in other words, these vibrations that we call music, the notes are not called C, C sharp, D, E, F. F sharp, G flat. The notes aren't called that. We've taken the different vibrations on the particular scale that a piano can play or a guitar can play. We took all the necessary vibrations that can be played and gave them code words, right? So we'll call this one C. We'll call this one low C, high C. We'll call this one D, call this one E. But it's pure vibration. If you think about it, like any instrument that you can play, it's just making vibrations. But we've given it a code system so that we can communicate to each other through a type of musical language. The same thing with the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life covers all the vibrations of the universe. And we put different codes and labels on them, like Hakma, Bina, Malkuth, the 32nd path, the 21st path, the 11th path. These are all code words for one of the, how many is it? So it's 22 times 4. It's 88 plus 40. Is it 40? Yeah, because 10. So 88 plus 40. Interesting. 128, if I'm not mistaken. So they've classified 128 different vibrations of the universe. Interesting. Makes me think about computer memory and the size that it comes in. 128, 256. 512, 1024, 2048. Interesting. Ashley B asks, why might it be that the scale for Bria is mostly seen? Well, one of the main reasons for that is because Bria is going to be the most realistic, highest level of influence that the average person can attain to. So that highest scale of absolute, we're dealing with the archetypal universe, and there isn't going to be much influence that our conscious will can have over that level. So Bria is the highest realistic level that we can work with on the tree consciously. Making changes in the level of Bria will make changes in Absolute, will make changes in Yetzirah, which is the astral plane, and then that will make changes in Asaya, which is the tangible reality. And excuse me. In other words, if you can't get a hold of the president, we've got the phone number of the vice president, right? Since we don't have the phone number of God, we got the phone number of the archangels, so to speak. That level is associated with the archangels. Kevros SS God says, so when you go into meditation and you see two colors, are those the representation of those forces in the chart? Yes. And that's specifically if you're doing this on purpose. If you're attempting to do this on purpose and that's what you get as a result, the answer is yes. All right, let's keep going. I like this explanation here. So, some of the color attributions seem to be very arbitrary and have been overcomplicated by some of the leaders of the modern esoteric schools. There are actually 4 color scales in connection with the Tree of Life. These are known as the King, Queen, Emperor, and Empress scales. When we consider the complexity of the scheme of 4 complete trees with their appropriate color scales, We may be excused if we feel that the subject has been unduly complicated. But although, for most purposes, we can use the first two color scales only, we must not forget that more advanced work will necessitate the use of the other two. Right? That's what I meant. However, for ordinary work, the first two scales, the king and the queen scale, will be sufficient, and they have been included therein. It is important to remember that these scales are tuning in devices, and before they can be of any great use to us, we must build them into our consciousness. This building in is dual. There is first the definite visualization and conscious building up of the colors concerned, together with a conscious presentation of the philosophical concept which is represented by the sephira with which we are dealing. Reference to Dion Fortune's mystical Kabbalah and Regardi's Tree of Life will give the particular philosophical concepts required. If you don't have those two books, you should get them and study them if you want to understand Kabbalah as taught by this particular tradition. Those are probably the two best books out on the subject that I've seen from this particular tradition. But when the colors connected with a certain sephira has been built into the consciousness and linked with its appropriate concept, we've done only half the work. Rainwater, peace. J. Bald, hail. Good evening. All right, so visualizing these colors and linking them to their concept, that's half the work. This complete visual and philosophical constellation or associated thought group must now be passed through the dividing veil, or rather the threshold of the subconscious must be raised until the thought group can be taken up by it. This is the willed cooperation of which we will speak in the chapter on the subconscious. And this willed cooperation, or auto-hypnosis, is accomplished by the use of the technical device of the flashing colors. What do we mean by a flashing color? The usual authorities give a quasi-mystical explanation, which, although true, is no real explanation, merely a blind, which puts the frivolous off the scent. Not that the frivolous could employ the technique of the flashing colors to any real purpose. They have not the application and perseverance required. They may essay the use of the flashing colors with the most curious results, but the essence of the matter eludes them. So we may quite openly describe the use of the flashing colors as a technical Kabbalistic method of auto-hypnosis. This auto-hypnosis is produced by the utilization of a simple optical effect. As we have noted in our remarks on the topic tides, if one gazes for any length of time at a colored disc or other figure, and then looks away at any white screen, one sees thereon the outline of the figure one has been gazing at, but in the complementary color. Thus, if we have been gazing at a red disc, we shall see the complementary image of the disc on the white screen, but its color will be a vivid green, which is the complementary color of red. Now, if we construct a red disc whose surface is cut in facets or outlined in diamond shapes, and in the center of each red facet, we insert a brilliant green point, then we have a device which can prove very effective in bringing about this willed cooperation between the conscious and the subconscious levels. As we gaze quietly at it, centering our attention upon the red field, there comes a time when the muscles of the eye relax slightly and its focus alters. Then, immediately the complementary green flashes up, and at the same time, the complementary red of the green flashes up. And the result is that the disc appears to be alive, with brilliant flashes of green and red. Quiet and prolonged gaze at this flashing tablet will induce a condition wherein we are tuned into the particular psychic energy in both ourselves and in the objective planes, which is represented by the field color red. I hope y'all are getting this. So, the flashing tablet is a true contacting device which has the advantage of having definite physical plane basis and being therefore a more stable link than a purely mental image. In constructing such a flashing tablet, it is necessary to get clearly fixed in the mind the fact that the ground color is the key color with which we are focusing, which we are working. The charge color placed on the ground is complementary. Thus, in our example, the color red is the one we are working with, as we wish, in this case, to contact the energies of the Sephirah Gibara on the tree. It is important to note that for meditative work alone, we can use the second color scale so that our work remains subjective. This is very important, especially in the early stages of training. To make contact suddenly with the objective energies concerned can be very startling, to say the least. Boom. So, there's your answer for your question, Ashley. Like I said, it's better to have the phone number of the vice president or, the secretary of defense or something than the actual phone number of the president, because, like he says here, to make contact suddenly with the objective energies concerned can be very startling. And I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever had a authentic contact, it's not always pleasant and pretty. Sometimes it's terrifying. Sometimes it's unsettling, discomforting, right? The beauty of it is making contact like that and being prepared for it. You can start to have this type of respect and this awe, right? This admiration for the divine. Because we don't have deep contact on a regular basis, it's easy to take for granted the spirit. It's easy to take for granted astral abilities and psychic abilities, and the fact that these correspondences is truly the world bending in your favor with every word you say and thought you think and feeling you feel. It can be weird to really see that. It can be startling. It can shake you. But it's easy to forget that sometimes. It's easy to forget that sometimes. So it is good once in a while to tap in for real and to respect it. I think a lot of people who, take this type of work for granted or don't take it seriously, I don't think that they've actually had real contact. So it's easy for them to treat this stuff as it's, just some trend, some popular trend for the internet. And then, of course, people who are not prepared, as you've seen, they make contact, and the next thing you know, hey, I'm an ex-occultist, and now I'm a Christian, and I'm just here to warn people about dabbling in the occult because I almost sold my soul, and I didn't realize I was working with the devil, all this stuff. They'll start telling these stories, not because that's truly what happened, but because they made contact and they didn't do the necessary work to prepare themselves. So they got frightened and they went back to what they knew that was safe. And if that's their karma to do so, more power and praise to them. Because you'd rather have them on that side than on this side trying to teach you something they don't understand. Tell you what, man. I thought I was about to tap in with the gods recently with a few, what do you call it, entheogens, some things that grow out the ground. And I decided to open up the most intense chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, thinking that I was about to connect with Vishnu. And what I saw was just that, something very startling. Maybe you can Google what's in chapters 10 and 11 of the Bhagavad Gita. Extremely intense. All right, let's continue. Speaking of chapters 10 and 11, that's the chapters that we're on in this book. Chapter 11, the vestments. The vestments. Adam Davis, peace. Adam Davis says, stoked because I just started reading, I started your reading of Dion Fortune's Mystical Kabbalah today. Oh yeah, it's a great, great book. Especially if what you want to understand is Kabbalah. Pablo X69, peace. Anna Molly, peace. Always good to see you. Adam Davis says, I started planetary mantras last week as well, and it has been helping me overcome my daily struggles and anxiety. That's wonderful to hear. Please keep it up. Please keep it up. I know it can be a bit easy to get distracted and say, oh, well, I'll do it later, or maybe I won't do it today. But keep up a routine if you can, because the effects compound over time. They absolutely add up and stack over time. So good to hear, and I hope that you really integrate it into your daily life. Veronica Archaga, good evening. Good evening. Peace, peace. DKDF says, do you have a technique to keep self-calm during those startling encounters, or it's just practice? Yes, I do have a technique, and what it is even if, so what? That's that quote, even if, so what? Because the thing that scares me, at least, and anyone else that I've really talked to that have had an experience like that, what scares them is, or scares us, is that we're worried and concerned about our place in the situation, right? So if you're seeing this destructive deity consuming galaxies and you're afraid for your safety, right? I mean, that sounds crazy when you're like just in regular consciousness, but when you're under that deep trance of those things that grow out of the earth, the apparent threat is very real. So when you're faced with something, first really understand that you're looking at yourself, right? But mainly release the fear of this threat that harm or danger is on the way. Like really release that. And the way that I get there is I say, even if, so what? Even if that worst thing that I'm dreading and fearing is going to happen, so what? So what? And when you start to release that concern for like self-preservation, when you let that go, you begin to enter into a state of trust, into a state of love, to where now you can witness whatever it is that you're witnessing. You can observe it without being attached to it, without taking it on. Because here's the thing with these trips. If you allow that fear to take hold, you now steer the trip into that direction. So what you have to do is release that fear of personal threat. Just observe it. Like literally just observe it. Take it like that. It's like you're watching a movie. Because I tell you what, that's practice. That's practice. One day when this body is finished, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to have that fear of, oh my God, well, I can't die yet. Not yet. No. You're going to have all that running through your head. But if it's really your time, if you learn how to be non-attached, you'll find that that stress will pass right out of your mind as soon as it entered. Even if the worst happens, so what? Cause see, I don't really do stuff like that because most of my life I always get paranoid. I never really was a weed smoker like that because when I would light up, I would instantly get paranoid. So what I had to learn was, you know what? Whatever this threat is that I'm imagining, even if, so what? Even if, so what? And that instantly, well, not instantly, but it gradually begins to dissolve that fear. I hope that was helpful. Trey Mayer vocal harmony piece. Like Sunshine Chick says, stay calm, trust, breathe. Chapter 11, the vestments. As we have seen, when we considered the color scales, the various levels of the unseen are symbolized each by their own color. Though, in some cases, these symbols may be arbitrary and bear little initial correspondence to the plane they symbolize. Yet, if they have been in use long enough, they will have been built into the egregore and will therefore be effective in keying the student to that particular level. Did you hear that? This is an important chapter. Let me read that again. As we have seen, when we considered the color scales, the various levels of the unseen are symbolized each by their own color. Though in some cases these symbols may be arbitrary and bear little initial correspondence to the plane they symbolize, yet, if they have been in use long enough, they will have been built into the egregore and will therefore be effective in keying the student to that particular level. If they are truly in correspondence with the plane concerned, their power will be proportionately greater. In this matter, there exists a great need for a thorough revision of much of the magical tradition. One of the weak points of the Order of the Golden Dawn was its excessive eclecticism. It tried to include far too much, and some very doubtful attributions crept into use. Though through these attributions do act as channels of power, a good deal would be gained if they were, by process of neglect and the cultivation of the true correspondence, allowed to slip back into disuse. So what's he saying there? What did he just say there in that paragraph? So looking at the tree of life, looking at the Kabbalah, looking at the different colors of the Sephiroth, looking at the different colors of the paths, looking at the different God names associated with the angels, the tarot cards, look at all the different symbols associated with the tree of life, the paths, and all that stuff, right? What he's saying is many of those symbols and colors hold a true and direct correspondence to what they represent. A true and direct correspondence to what they represent. For example, if you look at the 11th path, which is the path that connects Kether to Hakma, so right up there at the top of the tree, the path that connects Kether and Hakma, who knows what tarot card that represents? Or who knows what tarot card represents that path, the 11th path? I'm sure someone will guess correctly. Thank you, Ashley B. The Fool, right? The Fool card is represented by it. So if you really analyze the symbolism within that Fool card, the little white dog, the jagged heels in the background, what he's wearing, him looking up to the sun, all those different things. If you analyze those symbols, you'll see that seemingly careless stepping out into the great unknown without fear, like we just talked about, that's a very symbolic pictorial representation of the path between Kether and Hakma. So that's a good symbol. Now, what he's saying is that there are some symbols that are not very clear, and that's probably because somebody just kind of threw them in there for whatever reason, and it might not make much sense. You will find symbols in the Tree of Life that don't make too much sense. However, that doesn't mean it doesn't work. He said simply because these same symbols have been in circulation and heavy use for a very long time, at any given time, somebody on this planet is working with these rituals and this energy. So it's literally a living tradition. Like since it was created and solidified, there has been a group of people working with it at any given moment of time. So even if the symbol don't look like it makes sense, it's still part of the egregore. It's still part of the machine. It still works. It's still going to let you tap in or key in, as he says, to that particular level of the soul. Now, when the correspondence is really good, when it's really clear, for example, you look at the cover of Dion Fortune's Mystical Kabbalah, if you really blow that picture up, all the different correspondences on those Sephiroth are very solid. You'll see Antiphoreth, you'll see Christ, you'll see the cross, you'll see baby Jesus, right? That's a great explanation of what the energy of Tiferet is all about. In Gibra, you'll see a war king on a chariot with two storming horses and his sword. He's ready to go to war. That's a good example of what Gibra represents. You'll see in Chesed, the sphere that represents for Jupiter, you'll see a king sitting on his throne, chilling, relaxed, ruling his kingdom in peace. These are all clear symbols of three types of kings, right? A king during peacetime, a king during wartime, and the king that is the savior of his people, that sacrifices for his people, that was born for his people and died for his people. You'll get those three flavors of kingship that represents three types of universal energy. So those correspondences are very clear. And because they're very clear, they help you to tap into them even better. All right. We grow natural family. Peace, peace. Happy to catch you on at this time. Awesome. Happy for you to join us. Anna Molly says, he said some of the groups of the past have got lost in the sauce, still has power, but finding the original is better. Yes, yes. And that's what I was getting to, what he said. Over time, like you said, because they're so eclectic and they include so many different things within their tradition, some of the correspondences don't make sense. So yes, sometimes less is more. And what he's also saying is, there is room. This isn't like a solid, unchangeable thing. There's always room for growth, meaning that there are symbols that will need to be replaced. We live in a different world from the 1888, 1800s. This is a different world. So there are some symbols that do need to be replaced. But yeah, that's what he's saying here. But the use of the colors is fundamental. They are to be found throughout the whole magical scheme, and the use of the flashing colors is foundation work. And what he's saying here is all the symbols can change and will change, but the colors stay. The colors stay. As the colors key us to certain forces, it follows that the use of vestments of the appropriate color will help us to link up with those forces. All right? That is the simple rationale of the vestments. And when he says vestments, you know what he's talking about, right? He's talking about the clothes, your garb. It could be your daily wear or it could be your ritual wear, right? If you like to dress up when you do your rituals or whatever, you want to make sure that you have some type of color that corresponds with the energy that you're tapping into. Since the Western tradition has been strongly influenced by the Greek, Hebrew, and Egyptian traditions on the one hand, and the medieval Catholic Church on the other, it will be found that the robes worn in the magical fraternities reflect one or other of these sources. Many of them are magnificent pieces of work, but it is necessary for the student to remember that their value does not depend merely upon their magnificence. Plain robes of the appropriate color are every bit as effective as the most exotic designs. I don't care what kind of suit you wear. So, hopefully everybody knows this. You don't have to spend $1,000 on some kind of Catholic robe or whatever ritual robe. What matters more is the color, right? Plain robes of the appropriate color are every bit as effective as the most exotic designs. I don't even wear logos anymore. I just do straight solid colors. Apart from their value as color suggestions, they serve a very useful purpose. They screen off the personality of the operator and so make for impersonality. And this is why you wear these particular robes. This is why you wear the magical uniform, because it helps to mark the distinction between human you and God you, right? And this is for you and your ritual, not for everybody else to look at you and say, "Oh, you deep and spiritual because you dress like that." No, this is for you and your subconscious mind. So you know whenever you put the particular ritual outfit on, that's to almost mark a point in time where you stop and true you comes out. Alora, peace, welcome. Great to have you. Alora says, such perfect timing. Peace, everyone. So grateful to be here. Side note, Mars is currently in Scorpio, so if you want to tap into something, red would be a good color for added power. That's great advice. Red, rojo. So I'm going to read that again. Apart from their value as color suggestions, they serve a very useful purpose. And what purpose is that? They screen off the personality of the operator and so make for impersonality. This is of very great importance, especially when magical work is being done by a group comprising both sexes. In some lodges, cowls or hoods are used, and this gives even greater impersonality. The robes have another interesting effect. They act as a very strong auto-suggestion, which has the power of keying the mind to the operation at hand. Merely to vest oneself in the robes of one's grade automatically quickens the emotional link which we have with our group or fraternity. This is a great help in the first part of a magical rite, when we are concerned with the operation of the preparation of the place of working. From another angle, the robes are of use. During the many magical operations undertaken through the years, the robes become charged with a certain etheric energy or magnetism. And though the fairly frequent cleaning processes which are necessary, though not always carried out, will disperse some of the magnetism, they soon become charged up again. In this state, they play a part in the interplay of etheric forces which occurs in the magical lodge. Right? So it's not about dress up so you can play pretend. The robes are tools. They are literally tools for the ritual. Magical robes. Does anybody even wear magical robes and hoods anymore? A word of warning. When you have once used your magical robe, never, under any conditions, thereafter use it for any purely secular purpose. Never parade it before others, even in private. And never, never follow the example of one lady, an actress of note, and a prominent member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, who attended a fancy dress ball, clad in the robes of her grade in that order. Don't do that. It ain't for everybody to see. The present writer once broke this rule, and on entering his lodge some days later, was greatly surprised to receive a thorough telling off from the ruler of his degree, whose clairvoyant faculty had evidently made him aware of the incident which had happened several miles away, and of which he could not normally have been aware. It was a salutary lesson. Mm, mm. I get a pass because part of my magical ritual is YouTube videos. So I get a pass with it. Jay Baldhell says, for sure, I love them. Brian Psilocybin says, I got my hood on right now in the house. Right. Although I have gone to the gas station once or twice, nothing bad happened. Oh, maybe that's why, because I hit the power button. Is that why? No, it's not. Hmm. The subconscious. Ooh, here we go. The spicy chapter. Chapter 12. Chapter 12. And by the way, since we're speaking about the subconscious mind, in case you don't know, boom, I'm doing the cyclomancy class. The class begins on the 25th. If you're interested in taking this class with me and the group work that we're doing, go ahead and sign up for the class. The doors are open. The link will be in the description. If you don't see it yet because I'm live and I'm reading, you can find the link on the previous video, the two previous videos, and the post that I made in the community tab of my YouTube channel. But if you're ready to take the cyclomancy class and learn how to do the exercises that strengthen your psychic power control, link up, join up, because we begin on the 25th of this month. I'm going to be mailing out workbooks that we'll be able to use to keep your progress tracked. That's what we're working on right now, me and Apollo Soul. And we're giving it 2 weeks so that we can have these things all mailed out and so that we can assign you into your groups so you can work with your partners. So the class begins in 2 weeks and you have a little bit of time to sign up, but don't wait for too long because like I said, we want to mail you out the workbook and get you in your group. All right, so quite a few people here in the chat have already signed up, and I'm looking forward to scheduling our appointment and getting started. All right, now, chapter 12, the subconscious. WVT says, hey Trav, I sent a message about that to you in the Major Society messages. Okay, yes. I did scan it today just before I started the live. I was at a wedding today, so I didn't really do too much social media stuff. But yes, I did see it, and I will get back to you after this. I'll send you that link. Weddings are fun. Weddings are fun. Nice energy. Okay, so the subconscious. A certain knowledge of psychology is necessary if the apprentice magician is to make the most use of his art. But this psychological knowledge must always be held lightly. What a short time ago was termed the new psychology has developed so swiftly that it now suffers from embarrasse de richesse. What is that? I wonder what that phrase means. EMBARASSE DERICHESSE. What a short time ago was termed the new psychology has developed so swiftly that it now suffers from embarrasse de richesse, and the beginner finds it most difficult to follow intelligently the intellectual mazes of the Freudian Jungian, and Adlerian schools of psychology, to mention not to mention only the primary schools. The many schools, depending upon these three, but expressing themselves from different angles, need not be mentioned here, since their general teaching is the same. What are the simple outlines? This question is most difficult to answer, since any simplification is bound to omit points which seem to many to be of primary importance. What we will here attempt is not a simplification of modern psychological theories, but rather a restatement in psychological terms of the magical teaching concerning the mind of man, or rather, to be more exact, the soul of man. The first point to be considered is the nature of the soul. And here, the magical schools declare with one voice that man is a spark of the eternal flame, a god in the making. This is the true man, the indweller of light, as the old Gnostics termed him. This immortal self, for reasons which lie outside our present terms of reference, is making contact with and manifesting in the material worlds of physical and superphysical matter. The instrument by means of which this contact and manifestation is maintained is known as the personality, and it is indeed, as the etymology of the word suggests, a persona or a mask through which the true self works. Let's run it back. The instrument by means of which this contact and manifestation is maintained is known as the personality. You guys remember from yoga, we called this the Antakarana. Remember that? The instrument, right? And what does Antakarana mean? The inner instrument. Who remembers the four parts of the Antakarana? Who remembers that? Who's still studying the Vedic stuff, the yoga stuff? Who remembers the four parts of the Antakarana, the inner tool, the inner instrument? I gotta go back and check the notes, huh? See, that's why I said write it down. That's why I said write it down. Thank you, Anna Molly. Anna Molly says embarrassment de richesse, embarrassment of riches, more than one needs. Okay, thank you. That's what that means. Listen at Burr, Buddhi, Chitta, Manas. And don't forget the most important one now, Ahamkara, which is the ego, the particular personality that he's referring to here, the I maker, that thing which says this is me and this is not me. I like this, I don't like this. All these are aspects of what we call the mind. In fact, as you dig through this book, if you have it, you'll see that a lot of it is talking about Manas. This book is talking about different parts of Manas. And it also refers to Buddhi, I should say, all regulated through Chitta. Once you know this Vedic stuff and you realize that most all the magical stuff we read about, once you learn the Vedic stuff, you'll see it in everything. You'll see it in everything. But yeah, the four parts of the inner tool, the Antakarana, is Buddhi, which is the highest intellect, the higher self, right? The superconscious, Buddhi. You've got Chitta, which is the mind stuff, the mind substance. This is what you create your understandings and impressions of reality out of, right? This etheric astral substance. The third aspect is, as we said, Ahamkara, which is the I maker, the ego, the part of you that says, I like this, I don't like this. And the fourth part is Manas, which is the body mind, which is the intelligence of the mind itself. There is a separate intelligence within you that controls your blinking, your breathing, your heartbeat, how your muscles work, right? There's different parts of your body that has its own intelligence. You don't control or regulate how your stomach churns and digests food and pushes it to the intestines and whatnot, extracting the nutrients. Or when you eat something that is bad for you, you purge it out of yourself immediately. You don't control those aspects. There's a separate intelligence, and that's called manas. That's where we get the word man from. That body mind, that automatic subconscious body mind, right? Really cool stuff, man. Really cool stuff. So continuing on, the instrument by means of which this contact, and what contact? Just a little bit more. This immortal self, for reasons which lie outside our present terms of reference, is making contact with and manifesting in the material worlds of physical and superphysical matter. Superphysical is etheric. The instrument by means of which this contact and manifestation is maintained is known as the personality, and it is indeed, as the etymology of the word suggests, a persona or mask through which the true self works. So we come to the statement ascribed to the old Greek initiates. I am a child of earth, but my race is from the starry heavens. The personality we may term the lower self. Now, the mind of man, check that out. See, it says that right here. The word man is derived from the Sanskrit manas, which means the thinker. I told you. This stuff is all referring back to the Antakarana. But let's keep going. The personality we may term the lower self. Now, the mind of man is the point of contact between these two aspects of himself. And we therefore find that part of his mind is conditioned by and linked to his immortal self, whilst the other part is linked to and conditioned by his material consciousness. Now, the material consciousness is largely built up through the perceptions of the material senses, and more particularly through the perceptions of the 5 physical senses. This aspect of the mind is usually referred to as the lower mind, and together with the emotional aspect of our natures, it makes up what the Kabbalists term the Ruach, or reasonable soul. All right, so now he's getting into, he's blending the Kabbalistic with the Sanskrit and the psychological. So this lower self and this higher self, it's not new age. This is a concept that has been around longer than most of the nations of the world. So, the lower mind. This aspect of the mind is usually referred to as the lower mind, and that's what we've built out of our 5 senses, right? That's the lower mind. And together with the emotional aspect of our natures, it makes up what the Kabbalists term the Ruach, or reasonable soul. This Ruach is the instrument of the higher self, its mask or persona, and it is here that what has sometimes been called the false ego is centered. That's the ahamkara. This false I, which seems to the ordinary person to be himself, is in reality an illusion insofar as it is thought to be the true ego. All right? All right? So your higher self is it's the real you, of course. But this personality of yours that you think is you, and you decide how you dress and how you style your hair, if you don't have hair, how frequently you shave your head, all the different things that you identify yourself with, That is literally just a mask and a tool for your soul to use to operate within the physical plane. This personality you've developed, your likes, your interests, and the things that you enjoy, and all that's part of the mask of the higher self. Here's the thing, you think it's you. You think it's you. Isn't that wild? Because we all think that this personality is us. All of us do. Until we get to know what that higher self is. And how do you get to know what your higher self is? The only way to do that is by expanding your awareness beyond this tool. You have to expand your awareness beyond this tool. Meditation is a simple, free way to do that. However, it takes discipline to consistently meditate, and it takes a little bit of, I would say, study to deeply meditate, right? But hey, we've been on this subject for a long time, years. And if it hasn't clicked yet, give it some time, it will. If it hasn't clicked yet, it's because the mask is resisting as it's supposed to. They say the devil's time is short, right? And he knows his time is short. Yo, we got people talking about the demiurge and, oh, the archons are blocking me. Well, that's what your archons and your demiurge are. It's that lower self. It's that ahamkara. It's that ruach. It's that animal beast body, right? I've been doing a study personally about what happens when people are put together in, we should say, stressful conditions, and people start to naturally revert to their animal selves, right? They start to establish this hierarchy of dominance and submission. You'll see it in social structures everywhere, but especially places where there is high stress. On one end of the spectrum, we can talk about war, right? And prison. When people are placed in those situations, they start to revert to the control of their animal self. But you also see it in more sophisticated, so-called free aspects of society and social interaction. That animal nature is still there, but it's just, it's dressed differently, right? We know when, or maybe you don't know, but there's certain places in the world where it is the rule of the beast. It's the rule of the beast man, right? It don't matter how smart you are, what kind of whatever. Anyway, this part comes built in because it's the animal self. The same way that other animals know who the alpha is, right? They know who the leader of the pack is, and they know who's not. The females know who to breed with, right? And the other males know you have to challenge and fight your way to the top or die. They know that you have to hunt or you don't eat. These things come built into the animal mind. And it's just wild to me that some human beings are still subject to and forced to live that way. It's wild. But that's Prakriti. That is Prakriti's rules. That's what she's been doing for God knows how long. And it seems to have worked for her. So the Matrix will continue. Messiah Ben Yisrael, peace. Maximilian, peace. Ashley B says, it slips my mind what the experiment was called, but IIRC civilians were put in a prison setting. Some were made prisoners, some guards, and that exact scenario happened. Right, right. And there have been other social experiments like that where people quickly drop their civil social nature. They quickly drop the pleasantries and stop pretending to be sane and instantly go into animal mode. I'm telling you, man, There's a lot of people who are still in animal mode. They just learned how to blend in. I'm telling you, from true observation and experience, you'll see it. That's the animal nature of the human. That's what we are. Or I should say that's what this body is. And as this chapter is saying, the body is used as a tool of the higher self. The higher self ain't even human, y'all. The higher self ain't even a human. It's something else. But it uses this animal called man as a tool. Do you hear that? And the personality is the mask of that tool that it operates through. That should tell you that the higher self, it's not limited to humans. It works through other entities as well. It is not a human. J. Richardson L. Peace. 223 Soldier. Peace. 223 Soldier says Stanford Prison Experiment. Yeah, that's what it's called. Thank you for that. Maximilian says, I saw it walking the other day. A man walked past me but started screaming and waving his hands at a woman. Alora says, I've seen that firsthand with kids. When they feel really threatened, they all revert to animal behavior. Right. Right. We talk about how evolved we are because we have iPhones and flying Tesla cars. But the thing is, none of us created no iPhones or no Tesla cars. Specific individuals did. But we are just the people who buy them and use them. We didn't create none of that stuff, right? We say we're so sophisticated and advanced because we have computers and all these other things. We didn't make that stuff. It was here for us when we got here. Asaya bin Yisrael says, do you think movies have something to do with the programming of the anima nature? I think that art reflects reality. Human beings have been this way before movies. In fact, there's rich and vivid history of the fact that human beings have been behaving this way most of our existence here. I think we seek the entertainment that reflects the energy that we already have in us. I think that people tune into what they want to tune in. You're watching this video instead of some bullshit, right? I think we tune into what we want to tune into. IDKDKDF says, blend in and be cool while fighting deep animalistic urges in the disguise of social norms. Right, right. Jay Richardson L says, I call it the reptilian complex of the brain or survivalism. Raising Kundalini plays a huge part in keeping this in check. Right, you're absolutely right. Because the lower, just like what this book said in the previous book by this author said, those lower three chakras are the animal lines, right? That lower root chakra is all about self-preservation, right? And then the sacral chakra is about creation. And then the stomach chakra, Manipura, that's all about the group herd mentality. So when a person is operating on those levels, no matter how pretty you paint it, no matter how much makeup, no matter how much bling or name brands or whatever, we're still operating on those lower levels. How do I preserve myself? How do I create? Specifically, how do I have sex? And how do I blend in with a group? How do I feed my herd mentality? Most people are operating on only those levels. It takes consistent work to rise above the animal nature. It takes consistent work to rise above those three. What does he call them? What does Butler call those three things? I'll just say urges. To rise above those three urges. Mm, 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 mm. Maximilian says Dr. Jewel Pookrum talked about 7 circuits of the brain and reptiles and animal natures in the first 5. I read the ISIS. Was it the ISIS papers? Yeah, I read that years ago. Not recently enough to recall, but years ago. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. So we just read about the Ruach, right? The Ruach. And what he said here is that this aspect of the mind is usually referred to as the lower mind. And together with the emotional aspect of our nature, it makes up what Kabbalists term the Ruach, or the reasonable soul. This Ruach is the instrument of the higher self, its mask, its persona. And it is here that what has sometimes been called the false ego is centered. This false I, which seems to be the ordinary person to be himself, is in reality an illusion, insofar as it is thought to be the true ego. Below the Ruach, or reasonable soul, we come to the Nefesh, or the animal soul, and this can be equated psychologically with the subconscious. Perhaps the Jungian term is personal unconscious, a more correct term. Okay, so yeah, let me clarify. The Nefesh is the animal soul. The Nefesh is that animal soul. So all that stuff that we just talked about, that animal nature that's built in. Why? Because the human body, over millennia of evolution, we were purely animals without a very complex social system. So this whole mentality of kill or be killed, dominate, and submission, that was how we existed as animals for a long time, and how other animals exist. It was only recently that we developed the Ruach, the reasonable soul, right? It was only recently that we developed that as a creature. He goes on to say, all the aspects of man center in and are expressed through the guf, or the physical body. And here it must be remembered that, as psychosomatic medicine has pointed out, there is no separate physical body. It is one aspect of the living whole, and is in very truth the temple of the Holy Ghost. Now, the subconsciousness is related most closely to that system of nerves known as the sympathetic system. And it is the sympathetic or involuntary nerve system which carries on the multitudinous activities of the physical organism. The processes of digestion and elimination, the beating of the heart, the respiratory action, and the complex activities of the glands, all these, which now are automatic or subconscious activities, were at one time conscious actions. Sheesh. Their particular form of activity has been stereotyped through eons of evolution and now operates without the aid or knowledge of the conscious self. You know how crazy this is, man? So I was just thinking the whole. Okay, so we were just talking about society and like the animalistic part of society, and how on one end of the extreme, it is very savage, right? Very savage, where it's not about where it's pure power, dominate or be dominated, right? On one end of the extreme. On the other end of the extreme, it's you still find the same thing happening, but it's more sophisticated, right? That's because when when a society or a social network is not under that crazy amount of stress, when it's not under that pressure of survival, when it's not under all that, it's now allowed to evolve and expand and explore things like art, things like philosophy, right? When for example, if you're a caveman living in a cave and you don't have food tonight, you have to go out and hunt every day. All of your energy is put towards hunting, right? And then having sex, right? And then hunting some more, and protecting the tribe. All of your energy is focused on that. But once things become established, once everything has been figured out, you can put that on the back burner and explore different things, right? So I was just, I saw a little video clip of the guy who was like the most radiated person in history, in Japan. What was his name? What was his name? Well, anyways, in Japan in the 80s or 90s, I want to say, there was a nuclear disaster, and he became so irradiated, right? Of course, his skin fell off and his organs stopped working. Like, his flesh just he was down to the bone. The muscles dissolved. The DNA was completely destroyed. His DNA was destroyed. Somebody might know his name, but yeah, it showed pictures of him before, and then like weeks after, his skin started falling off and everything, and he was in excruciating pain. And the family decided to keep him alive. I think he stayed alive for like 80 days. I want to say 80 something days, and he couldn't do anything. Like, he's in excruciating pain. Think about that now. If you're in this body and you can't even use it, and all you can think about is the pain, you don't have time to think about philosophy and art and music and my rights and who am I going to vote for and Trump this and Biden, like all this stuff that we talk about and complain about and spend all of our time on. You'll see how utterly ridiculous it is, how utterly useless it is, right? We waste spirit energy on pure bullshit, right? A person in that condition, like that guy who was irradiated, I promise you, none of that stuff was ever entered into his brain again. All he was thinking about was how to survive, right? He's how to escape that pain, right? At one point in our evolution, just like he said, the functions of our body was not automatic. We had to spend all of our spirit energy on making sure that our blood was flowing, that we were blinking, that we were breathing and digesting, and all the stuff that's automatic today. Just like our society, right? Look at our society now. You don't have to hunt. You can literally drive to the grocery store. Excuse me. You can literally open an app and gingerly pick what stuff you want, and somebody else will shop for you and deliver it to your house. Do you know that that was something reserved only for extremely wealthy people? Now anybody with a smartphone can do it. The society we have today is built upon the backbone of much, much suffering. And we easily take it for granted, don't we? Easily take it for granted, wasting precious spirit energy on utter bullshit. Something to think about. Something to think about. What would happen if you spend your spirit energy on something that actually is useful and appropriate? Thank you, Hazard Pie. Hisashi Aochi, history's worst radiation burns, kept alive for 83 excruciating days against his will. The articles say by doctors, but it was actually his family. It was actually his family. Ru I Am says AI is making us dumb and lazy. I disagree intensely with that. AI is not making us dumb and lazy. We were already dumb and lazy. We were already dumb and lazy. Don't blame it on AI. Don't blame it on AI. Don't blame it on rap music. Don't blame it on nothing. Don't blame it on nothing external. It's in our nature because we don't have to be. Look, this is what I'm saying. We are these animals by nature. And because we've been removed from our environment of having to be animals, most of us don't know what to do. Most of us don't know what to do with this so-called freedom that we have. We don't know what to do with it because we spent so much of our racial experience as a human race being animals. This is new to us, and it's evolving faster than we are now. So this animal will really very soon reach the level of God. Most of them without preparation. All right, that was a fun tangent, but let's get back to it. Let's get back to it. Al-Diki says, Ruh and Nafs means soul in Islam. Trav is right. Throughout the past 2 years, I kept running into the Vedic in everything. Yes. Ru I Am says, blame it on the rain. Hey. Dimensional Legend says, people never get tired or sick or from flu. That won't ever happen. That Your system is very high level into optimal of health. If you're a god, it's all about immortality. And aren't we getting to that point where we're beginning to figure out these diseases? And we've prevented a lot of diseases. I know a lot of people complain about different medications and whatnot, but if you really think about it, entire societies were born with diseases, and a lot of these babies didn't make it. A couple hundred years ago, the lifespan of certain people was very short because of diseases that we now have cures for. And I'm pretty dang sure that we have cures for everything now. Eventually, that'll be common knowledge, but there's this whole thing about population control and all that other good stuff. And it's not that there aren't enough resources for everybody. That's not the reason they're talking about population control. It's because the human race has reached a mass capacity. And what you see are people who, indeed, have taken for granted this freedom. And, because of this animal boredom, it's almost as if we recreate these scenarios that we've evolved from. Isn't that what's happening throughout social media? People are recreating scenarios that they have officially been escaped from. But, different subject. Let's continue now. Let us continue now. So, the body is the temple of the Holy Ghost. Now, it is possible, however, to bring this automatic control back under conscious control through cyclomancy, though it is not always wise so to do. But when this is done, then it is possible to consciously control many of the purely involuntary mechanisms of the body, and, even under certain circumstances, to affect the purely automatic functioning, which is the basic level of the physical somatic life. We have said that such conscious control is not always advisable. This is true, for the clumsy probing of the conscious mind may easily upset the delicate mental and physical mechanisms. It is on record that Sir Francis Galton, the pioneer in eugenics, experimented in gaining conscious control of his breathing. Having at last gained the power to shut off the automatic breathing impulse and to remain without any effort of breathing, he found to his dismay that he had somehow lost the power of automatic breathing. Oh, hell no. And had to spend a very anxious day and night taking each breath consciously and with an effort of will before the automatic function returned. So that's exactly what I was talking about. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you had to revert back to that level, all the stuff that you think was so important right now will fly out the window, and that should tell you it wasn't really important in the first place. Now there is a book. I talked about how Dharana Darshan, like I'd always recommend Dharana Darshan because it has all of these different meditations that you can use to really bring yourself to a state where your sushumna can open up. You can get that sweet, sweet enlightenment that you're after. And it's a process. It don't happen overnight. I'm still working on it. But there's another book that's written by that particular author's guru, and it is an orange book. Who knows what that orange Bihar School of Yoga book is called? It's the big one. It's the biggest one, and it's got Shiva on the front. It's written by Swami Satyananda Saraswati. Anyways, that one includes a lot of meditations, but also the physical aspects of yoga and different practices to gain conscious control over certain automatic parts of the body. If somebody can type the title of that one in the chat, that would be helpful. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's the biggest one. It's the big orange one with Shiva on the cover. That one has many exercises of how to gain conscious control of unconscious functions. Aldicki says, I believe it was Ladder of Lights that talks about population control. I missed that book. That was a really, really good one. I had to take it off of YouTube because reasons. But that one is definitely worth rereading. 223 Soldier says, are breathing exercises useful? Absolutely. In fact, they're some of the most useful exercises. And I would even say breathing exercises are an example of focusing on self and realizing some of those other things that are not important. Pranayama, that's the Vedic word for breathing exercises. Excuse me. Pranayama can certainly help to open your eyes to what is really important and what is not without having to go through pain. Again, speaking of Bihar School, a good book for the pranayama is actually called Prana and Pranayama. It's the light blue book. Thank you, Ruayam. It is called Kundalini. No, 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 not Kundalini Tantra. Not that one. But yeah, that's a good one to have. I think the one I'm thinking of is called Kriya Yoga. But anyways, various yogis can be found in both East and West who can perform various psychophysiological tricks, such as altering the heartbeat, stopping the breathing, or reversing peristaltic action at will. The techniques used vary according to the grade and status of such people, and are best left alone by the apprentice magician. There are other ways by which he may eventually come to this physical dominion over his body, and these ways are safer than the usual techniques. But although we want neither an uncontrolled eruption of the subconscious into the normal consciousness, nor yet a clumsy interference by the conscious mind into the subconscious processes, it is desirable that we shall have some reliable method whereby we may be able to bring through into waking consciousness the knowledge and the energies which are all around us, awaiting our efforts. We have access to forces and energies beyond our normal ken, if we will but open the doors in the right way. Now here we come again to the saying of Bulwer Lytton Rosicrucian Adept, Mejnour. Man's first initiation is in trance. This will be indignantly denied by many of the so-called positive people. In their estimation, trance is retrograde and entirely undesirable. With certain reservations, we may agree with this facile generalization, but the reservations cover quite a lot of country. In a period of over 40 years of practical occult, psychic, and magical work, one has obtained certain data on this point. I believe that orange book that I'm referring to is called Kriya Yoga. I think it's called Kriya Yoga. It's got Shiva on the front. It's the biggest one. It's way bigger than the Descent and the Ascent. I think that book is like 1,000 pages. I want to say the one I'm talking about. I think is 1,000 pages. I think there's one where they even have it where like you can clean out your esophagus and your stomach by sticking a whole t-shirt down your throat and pulling it out. Like, it gets pretty intense. Definitely one of the advanced ones that they say don't try unless you know exactly what you're doing. I also recall an exercise where you're supposed to clean out, your bottom by learning how to train your muscles to suck water up into yourself and then push it back out. So they're really talking about gaining control over all your muscular functions. All right, where were we at? We agree that the induction of the purely involuntary negative trance state under no protective conditions at all is both undesirable and psychologically dangerous to the normal individual, though some race types can safely practice it. I wonder what race types he's referring to. In the purely negative trance, the doors of the subconscious are thrown open, and a general jail delivery of subconscious thoughts and energies pours out of the conscious self. Such an eruption can be most harmful. But there are several degrees of trance, ranging from passive, involuntary trance of pathological dissociation, through the negative, but willed trance of many spiritualist mediums, to the voluntary positive power of trance projection, wherein the personality, consciously and deliberately, temporarily vacates the body. But even in the pathological trance of dissociation, there need be no danger if it is dealt with aright. And in the cases of the other varieties of trance, the establishment of certain protective conditions will obviate any risk. The present writer has had the opportunity of observing very many people of greatly varying types of mentality, working with the trance state under varying conditions. Some of these people were definitely the worst for their experiences, but they formed a very small minority. The real trouble with the negative forms of trance is that they either open up the subconscious in a very haphazard and wholesale way, or else they allow of the uncontrolled emergence of various psychological and psychic pathologies which were already present but held down below the subliminal threshold. Already present. Actually, B, I'd say that takes a lot of concentration. Without going into the technical points involved, it may be stated that the negative trance state usually involves complete unconsciousness of the physical plane, and as a general rule of the inner planes also. The thread of consciousness is broken at the point of departure, and again at the point of return. The thread of consciousness is broken at the point of departure, and again at the point of return. So the negative trance so far involves complete unconsciousness of the physical plane. So this type of trance he's talking about, your consciousness leaves the physical plane. In the ascending degrees of trance up to the most positive form, the thread of consciousness begins to remain without a break. And in some cases, a curious dual consciousness develops. In this dual consciousness, the psychic is more or less fully aware of the physical plane surroundings, whilst at the same time, he is fully conscious and active on the inner planes. Has anybody had an experience that could be described like that? I think we definitely have all had the first type of trance where the consciousness completely leaves the physical body. Everyone has that, right? If you don't remember, you had it last time you went to sleep. And then he's talking about this dual consciousness where not only are you aware of the physical plane, but you're also in trance on another plane. A curious dual consciousness develops. In this dual consciousness, the psychic is more or less fully aware of the physical plane surroundings, whilst at the same time, he is fully conscious and active on the inner planes. In this particular field, an ounce of practice is worth a ton of theory, right? You can read all day about this, but you don't know what he's talking about until you've actually experienced it, right? And if you have experienced it and you have practiced on how to maintain your frame, you can go a whole lot further than if it happens accidentally. He says, in this particular field, an ounce of practice is worth a ton of theory. And the present writer can assure his readers that trance, per se, is not necessarily dangerous. At the same time, it is true that Under certain conditions, the voluntary or involuntary induction of trance is undesirable and may even be dangerous. Under these conditions, it is advisable for the apprentice magician to aim at the positive end of the psychic range. What the heck? This battery was just full when we started. It's time for an upgrade. All right. Unicorn music will return shortly. And Amali says, when I started driving, what you said, I do that almost involuntary. They overlay like a digi display. When I started driving, it would happen, and I had to get that shit under control quick. Almost crashed a couple times. Yeah, yeah, it bees like that. Continue. It is also to be remembered that at a certain point in his development, it will be necessary for the flyer to be deliberately plunged into the sea. The flyer is an old alchemical term for the conscious self, and the sea is their name for the unconscious. But until the conscious self is properly integrated or knit together, a premature immersion in the psychic sea of the unconscious is not advisable. Look, until the conscious self is properly integrated or knit together, a premature immersion in the psychic sea of the unconscious is not advisable. Short of the deeper trance conditions, however, there are distinct advantages in a willed cooperation between the conscious and subconscious parts of our mind, and these have been used in the magical technique. The process is one of auto hypnosis. This term in itself will, in all probability, cause some of our ultra positive critics to frown. But let us hasten to say that this particular form of auto hypnosis is most carefully controlled and directed, and is at all times fully under the dominion of the conscious will. Having reassured the fearful, let us proceed. The principle used is that known as the conditioned reflex. A typical conditioned reflex is the watering at the mouth of a dog when it sees food. Here, the reflex is physical. In the case of the magician, the reflex is mental and emotional. Briefly, a visual, audible, or other sensory symbol is passed into the subconscious mind, and this evokes a response in accordance with the type of symbol used. If this symbol is one of or is mentally associated with one or other of the archetypal images in the depths of the unconscious, then the response may be very strong, and care has to be taken to see that the upwelling energies evoked by the symbol are run into safe channels. If the magician is working with the Kabbalistic glyph of the Tree of Life, then he will be working with such channels already provided. Hmm. Let's see here. In order to pass a symbol into the subconsciousness in such a way as to be able to evoke any particular response, it is first necessary to sensitize the subconscious or raise its level nearer to the waking consciousness. Remember, he said this about 3 times already, so that must mean it's pretty important. This willed emergence or outcropping of the subconscious is very imperative. Unless it is done, the symbol does not take, i.e., evoke an immediate response. And this is one of the primary keys of art magic. It is to be noted that the passing of the symbol into the subconscious mind must be an effortless act, to use an Irishism. Beyond the immediate clear-cut conscious intention to transmit the symbol, no further effort is required. Indeed, any such further effort will frustrate the purpose in hand. A very good simile is that of the electric light switch. It requires only a small momentary physical exertion to press down on the switch and so produce light. No matter how long we keep our finger pressed on the switch, we shall obtain no more light. Neither will it be put out if we remove our finger entirely. Indeed, our undue pressure on the switch may cause it to be put out of action, and so produce just what we were trying to prevent. There's a key. There's a key with your sigil magic, right? It should be effortless. It shouldn't be extraneous. It should be like flipping a light switch. When you flip a light switch, you just you tap it one time and it's good. It doesn't matter if you press down and hold it. It doesn't matter if you use extra force. You're not going to get any extra light. In fact, you're liable to break the light switch, which, like you said, is the opposite of what you wanted. Zoop, zoop. Give me one of them hot dogs. Not yet. So it is with magical work. But before the symbols can be the starting points of conditioned reflexes, it is necessary that the required conscious mental effort must have been used with them, and this is done through the training exercises which are to be found in all magical schools. The symbols must be built up by the image building power of the mind, as described in the section of this book devoted to visualization and audition. That was last time we read. Then conscious meditation must be made upon the spiritual, mental, and emotional aspects of the symbol, together with the energies connected with it. Here, the tables of correspondences used in the Kabbalistic method prove their value. When sufficient work has been done with the conscious mind, the student learns how to pass the symbol through to the open and sensitized subconsciousness. The process is similar to that of learning to play the violin. The musical symbols on the score are mentally interpreted as musical sounds, and the appropriate string of the violin is stopped with the finger to produce the note required. Now, the correct point to stop the string is acquired by the subconscious reflex, but for a long time, the movement of the fingers must be consciously brought about until the mental, emotional, and physical reflexes have been properly conditioned. Now, I know some of you understand what that means, but has there ever been a time or a skill that you had to learn by blind repetition over and over and over and over and over again to where eventually those things you just do automatically? Ashley B says muscle memory. Exactly. Exactly. Like I mentioned a few weeks ago, whenever I had the performance with my band, we only practiced 2 times before the show with a 20-year space in between, right? But because we spent so much time in our garage making music, the muscle memory stayed, and all we had to do was get back into that state. So there's physical things that you can do to condition the body, right? And Amali says writing, right? There's different things that you can do that form, a habit, or we should say a subconscious response. Well, consider what you do personally that you've conditioned yourself to do, right? I conditioned myself to do these YouTube videos, and hell, think about it. Playing video games, Fortnite. As soon as I cut that thing on, I've conditioned my thumbs and my eyes to do specific actions and behaviors. I don't have to look down at the controller. You ever played with somebody and they got to look down at the controller and see what button they're pressing? But after doing it repetitively, you associate this button with this action, this button with this behavior. So consider your personal thing that you train to do, whether it's in the gym, whether it's in the studio, right? Whether it's in your kitchen. Think about the things that you've trained yourself to do, that you condition yourself to do, and understand that that take that same process and it's magic. If you're trying to program a sigil, that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing, the same thing. You're associating a symbol with a response. You're associating a behavior with a response. So now whenever you do this behavior, you get this response. You see what I'm saying is, take your mundane experiences, take your everyday experiences of the other times you've already done this, and now apply your magic to it. It's not hard to do this. It's not hard to program a sigil. There's a lot of crazy stuff on the internet about what people are telling you to do to program your sigil, but it's literally just like whatever else you've programmed your subconscious mind to do. Check. Then we speak of automatic habit. It is fairly evident that any attempt to short circuit this necessary conditioning work is doomed to failure. Yet the writer has met many who did try to evade it in magical work. However, the reader may be assured that although the use of certain shortcuts may provide some spasmodic magical activity, such activity will be unregulated and out of conscious control. Let us briefly recapitulate. Within the depths of the personal and collective unconscious, in each one of us lie the powers and energies which we essay to evoke into appearance in our conscious self in order to effect those changes in consciousness, which by our definition of magic are our declared aim. In order to do this, we employ the device of the conditioned reflex by passing certain symbols into the sensitized subconscious in such a way as to evoke the required forces into the waking self. Since the personal subconsciousness is very largely a pictorial type, we use visual and other sensory symbols in preference to audible images, i.e., words. Certain words of power are used not for their literal meaning. Do we understand that? Certain words of power are not used for their literal meaning, but for their vibration and the conditioned images which have been built around them. Man, listen, this is high quality, highly nutritious soul food. The means whereby the subconsciousness is sensitized or brought nearer to the threshold of the waking self is the technical auto-hypnotic device known as the use of the flashing colors. This is used in conjunction with the color scales and correspondences on the tree of life. All right. So hey, before you leave, go ahead and hit that like button. If you enjoyed this lesson, this was some good stuff. Hit the like button. As always, I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate your inner drive and inner passion to learn this information and to make good use of it. If you're able to get your hands on this book, go ahead and do so. If not, I will do my best to make sure that, you got it here. So as I said before, I am now teaching the cyclomancy class. The doors will open. Class begins, I'll say, November 25. The doors opened yesterday as far as signing up for your seat. So if you're interested in taking the cyclomancy class, where we're going to go through the exercises of developing your psychic power control, sign up for this class. You'll find the link in the description of this video by the time I finish it. And if not, you'll find the link on the previous 2 videos that I did. All right, so have a great night. Have a great night. I hope you learned something. I really do. I hope you learned something tonight. For sure, for sure. And let's hit that like button. There's still so many more people here than there are likes. So I don't know if you're watching it and you don't like it or what's going on. But yeah, that should be everything. So I'm gonna go hang out with my son. He's been waiting patiently, listening to this book read because he wants me to go play, and we're gonna go do that. Enjoy your lives. Enjoy your lives. Enjoy your lives. Life is good. Life is good. It really is. And remember, you don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer. No matter what these other people talking about, no matter what these other folks got going on. Have a great night. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Love you guys.
Bye.
Peace. And my son says bye.